Hello, everybody. No push-ups from me, sorry. Our topic is, you've changed the light bulbs, now what? And this is designed to sort of set the stage for the next couple of days ahead. We have been coming here for Brainstorm Green, or at least coming to Southern California since 2008. We spent a lot of time with the most forward-looking, forward-thinking companies in America, hearing about their green initiatives. We've done GE and Eco-Magination, Walmart with its bold sustainability goals, IBM, smart cities, Coca-Cola and water, innovative startups like Method and O-Power. I could go on, but here's the hard truth. It's not been enough. I'm not going to bore you or depress you with the gloomy facts, but take a look at the climate assessment released a couple of weeks ago by the White House, and you will see that the pace of change does not match the scale of the problem. And that's what we're going to talk about here. The question here, how do we move beyond incremental improvements and the focus on efficiency to drive more transformational, faster, bigger, greater change? And we're going to talk about 3 ways to do that, and that's how this panel was assembled. The first is this idea of system change, which is where we get beyond the walls of any one company and try and look at either an entire industry horizontally or up and down a supply chain and say we want to really change that whole system. And Rick Ridgeway from Patagonia is here to talk about that. Then we're going to hear from Heather Zichal, who's on my far right, about carbon pricing, because the second big driver of change that we've identified is a more effective and efficient Washington policy on climate. And then we're going to talk about consumer behavior and a little about technology with not Lyndon Rive, who is still stuck on a tarmac apparently in San Francisco, but Jonathan Bass from Solar City has kindly agreed to sub in and join us on the panel. And I assume you probably know this, but Rick, Vice President of Environmental Initiatives at Patagonia. Heather was until fairly recently the White House climate czar. And Jonathan is a veteran of the wars at Solar City. He's been with the company for 6 years and watched it grow from really a startup to kind of a powerhouse today. So, Rick, I want to start with you. There's so much to talk about with Patagonia and the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, but let's start with the coalition because the theme is system change. You got Walmart, Patagonia, Nike, Levi Strauss, whose CEO is going to be here later this afternoon, into a coalition. Why? What have you accomplished? What kind of impact have you had? And then we'll do a quick question on Patagonia too.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. The Sustainable Apparel Coalition is essentially a trade organization that Patagonia co-founded with Walmart in 2010. And in just 4 short years, we've, I think, made remarkable progress in not just gathering a vast number of the apparel, footwear, and textile industry companies into the same room, but we've added to the group, and this is really key, NGOs, government agencies, universities, and through that multi-stakeholder engagement, I think we're on the path, on a roadmap to what might actually result in a systemic change in the way apparel and footwear is made on planet Earth. You know, first of all, we've succeeded in just that short amount of time in getting 40% of the entire apparel and footwear dollars on planet Earth aligned on this. That's what the coalition represents at this point. In just less than 4 years, we've become the biggest trade organization in the industry in the world. And the theory of change for this group is built around management by measurement. So our theory of change is to take the decision makers that are in the system. In our industry, that includes the designers in the companies, the buyers in the retailers, in the brands. It includes all the suppliers in the supply chain through the various tiers, and empower them with data to make the best informed sustainability decisions they're capable of making, and to empower them to do that by giving them the tools to make those decisions with. So that's the first thing we've done. We've built tools for all those different decision makers to make better decisions. It's called the Higg Index suite of tools. And that tool set is founded on verification. It's founded on total transparency. It's founded on open data source. And it's also, interestingly, founded on the principle of harmonization with other tools, so that we work in harmony with a lot of other measurement tools that are out there. So we've done that. All those tools are now being adopted. And as adoption increases, standardization begins. But more importantly, so does benchmarking. So this is like really important at our company at Patagonia, because as we start to use these tools to measure the footprint, both environmental footprint and social labor footprint of our business through the entire value chain, then we're doing that, being able to see where we're at with everybody else in the industry. And sure enough, even for a leader like Patagonia, we discover that there are all kinds of places where, compared to our cohorts, we're weak. And that really unleashes all kinds of competitive juices within our company, you know, to start improving our numbers. So that becomes a big driver in this. And then at the same time, what we've discovered is that collaborating with the supply chain and bringing them in to actually have them co-develop these tools creates new kinds of partnerships with those suppliers. And the spirit of those partnerships is transparent and equal partnership. That is a really key principle to this whole thing. So that you bring them, you know, to the table. It's no longer a one-way flow, but they're participants in this, and they buy into it, and they get to help manage the measurements that they're being asked to provide to their customers, and that empowers them. Psychologically, it's a really important factor. Now, this conference is here to talk about systems change. It's also here to talk about the change from politics as a driver, the change that citizens can add to the systems change that we're all looking for. But, you know, think about that. Systems change includes all of the above. So when we look in apparel at how to really change the system, we also have to see how our work in the supply chain can inform, through transparency, policies and government actions, because without those, you only get so far. You know, for example, without a carbon tax, we're never going to be able to reduce the footprint sufficiently to really drive change without a price on carbon, getting right back to what you're going to probably talk about, Heather. So you see how it's all interconnected. And then the big possibility is that this measurement that we're doing, which includes a product-level sustainability measurement, could be converted to a consumer-facing rating. And at Patagonia, we're really trying to lead the charge in providing our customers with a standardized measurement of the environmental and social labor impact of the products that we make and they buy from us. Because we want to also empower citizens to make more informed changes, because we're very aware of the power that can have to also drive systems change.
Okay.
Now I could keep going.
You could. We could do an hour on this actually, and it
could.
would be really interesting. And we haven't even talked about Patagonia, but let me get to Heather. We'll come back. So, Heather, you know, when we were first here in 2008, there was a great deal of optimism about carbon pricing. I'm sure you remember both candidates, Obama and McCain, were in favor of it. It's my sense we've moved backwards since then, but maybe I'm missing something. Where do you think we are, and perhaps more importantly, what path do you see to getting a price on carbon?
So I think, you know, I definitely agree with the general theory. 2008 was certainly a point in optimism, and if you fast forward to today, I think we're more in a universe of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good being that, you know, the story around renewables is great. Prices are coming down. Deployment is up. Greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. Is actually down. Good news. You know, the bad being, as you referenced, the National Climate Assessment, the IPCC report, all data shows that we are not doing enough here at home or globally to truly move the needle in a meaningful way. The ugly, I will wrap up by just kind of putting a bow around Washington right now, because the conversation in the nation's capital isn't what can we do to try and tackle this challenge. It's more steeped in, is climate change a problem, and crazy theories coming from the far right that's impacting the actual conversation. On the plus side of that, I look to the future, and I think this president has some really important tools that he has embraced that I think will leave us certainly leave the president in his second term with a really strong legacy on climate. I think the two big opportunities, which many of the folks in this room are probably very familiar with, are the Clean Air Act tools available to the administration. In just a matter of weeks, you will see a proposal come out from the Environmental Protection Agency that for the first time ever places greenhouse gas standard on coal plants. Obviously, this is something that has been a long time in coming. I think the president, if it were up to him, would be moving forward with an economy-wide approach. Unfortunately, we're just not there. And despite his number of attempts to try and engage Congress to find a path forward, that just wasn't possible. So the question that he asked his senior team to work on was, what existing authorities do we have to really make a difference? So June 2nd, certainly expect to hear from the president about what that rule is. I expect stringencies as well as timelines that many of the people in this room can embrace. And I do think, because we have made so much progress on renewables, on energy efficiency, on clean technologies, that there will be a lot of strange bedfellows that come out in support of this regulation, including many in the utility sector. So that's bright spot number one. I think bright spot number 2 through 5 are just the additional tools that the president indicated just about a year ago that he wants to take in order to engage all this across the administration, all the agencies that can really make a meaningful difference. There are going to be more energy efficiency regulations from the Department of Energy on the appliances that we have in our homes and businesses. There will be a lot of work done, and hopefully a finalization of new regulations on heavy-duty trucks that account for greenhouse gas emissions, tailpipe emissions, building on the progress made in the first term. So, is it perfect? Is it pretty? Not particularly. But the good news for everybody here is that there are some really important authorities that the president and the administration have. They're going to be taking those, and I think we are going to have an effective price on carbon, which will help deploy a lot of the technologies and that everybody in this room recognizes are going to be so fundamental to achieving these broader climate objectives.
A price on carbon in the electricity sector you're talking about?
Correct.
Right. Okay, we'll come back to this too. Let me bring in Jonathan. So for perhaps folks who don't know, or even those who do, sketch how far you've come at Solar City and where you're going and what impact you're having. How have you been able, in effect, to enlist consumers to join the solar revolution, if we want to call it that? And it's you, Sungevity, Sunrun, many other companies.
Sure. So we started July 4th, 2006, in our founder's spare bedroom. It was 2 people. Today we're over 6,000 employees. We're the largest solar employer in the United States. The secret to our success has really been giving the consumer what they want. We found that consumers don't like to change. If you want them to change behavior, you've got to give them a compelling reason to do it. The reason we gave them, we will install the system for free, and you can pay less for the solar electricity than you pay for utility bills. And so that's helped us become the largest provider in the country. We're providing 1 out of every 4 systems in the nation. And it comes down to that. We did a survey of about 1,400 homeowners nationally a few months ago. And there have been a lot of solar surveys done, and the industry sets them up such that they get a 90% positive response. So do you support solar? Right. Or do you think solar is good for the environment? Right. We decided to take a different tack and said, would you be interested in solar for your own home? And 62% of the respondents said yes, which is a staggering statistic when you think that there are 500,000 PV installations in the United States today.
That's all, 500,000 out of 110
Yes.
million homes.
Yes.
So still a small slice.
Yes. So over 60 million owner-occupied housing units in the U.S. and less than 500,000 installations. So if 62% of homeowners are interested in solar, not only for the nation, but for their own homes, you can see the potential. So what we have to do now is we have to get out of the way. We have to make it easier to adopt solar. We could start by making it as easy to install a solar installation in California as it is to build an oil derrick. You don't need a permit in the state of California to build an oil derrick, but you can go through quite a lengthy process and pay quite a bit just to get a permit to put solar on your own home. So we've got to make it easier. We've got to make it more affordable. But the interest is there. Sustainability will not drive it by itself. It has to be a quality, reliable service, and it has to be more affordable than the alternative.
I'm actually going to throw it out to the audience in the interactive spirit of Brainstorm in just a moment, but one quick follow-up for you, Jonathan. It's been largely, I think, a California, Arizona, Hawaii, subsidy-driven kind of market. Do you see potential for a national market for solar PV on people's roofs?
Absolutely. So we can offer solar electricity to homeowners at a discount to utility rates in about 15 states today. Those 15 have about half the U.S. population. So what's happened, the technology costs are coming down, the cost of capital is coming down related to solar as investors get more familiar with the asset class. The cost of operations are coming down. We're getting more familiar with how to install faster. And the retail cost of power is going up. Right. Even with record lows in natural gas, the aging grid, other factors are driving the cost of retail power up. Now, it would help if utilities could not pollute for free. I would love to see that carbon tax. But even without that, we're seeing the retail cost of power go up and the cost of solar electricity come down such that more and more locations in the United States, we're at retail parity today.
Okay. I've got a million questions, but let me turn it out to you folks. Who has a question for either Rick or Jonathan or Heather? And if I don't see one, I'll toss another one out and try again. Lee.
Hi there. I have a question for Heather. Lee Gallagher with Fortune. So a carbon tax makes all the sense in the world for penalizing behavior that damages the environment. But at the same time, at the highest level of federal policy, we actually encourage behavior that does the same thing in the form of our subsidized gas prices, and even, you could argue, the single-family home mortgage interest tax deduction. So I'm just curious, did those things even float into the universe, and does anyone even bring those up in your meetings at the White House? Or is it just, I think anybody who even brings that up is probably going to get voted out of office. But do those ever come into the conversation?
Not frequently is probably the best answer I can give you. Look, I think a couple things. One, there is not a clear-cut political consensus on literally any issue under the sun today. So I can sit around and get pretty depressed about the conversation that's happening in Washington on climate change, but it's just kind of an all-around depressing state of affairs in terms of trying to find common ground. There are certainly a number of different tools that I think the president's happy to deploy to try and make progress here. And I think if you look back at the report, the climate action plan that he put forward in June of last year, part of what makes this issue so complicated is that it's not just doing one thing. You have to think about the transportation sector. You have to think about the built environment. And you have to think, at this point in time, what are we going to do in all these different areas to move the needle? At the same time, I think there's real openness to looking at new ideas. But for right now, because there's so much focus on what we affectionately referred to in the nerd world in 111D, or the Clean Air Act Authority for greenhouse gas emissions. I think that is going to be so eating up so much of the attention and the focus of this administration now and through to the end of the president's second term.
Heather, what can the business people in this room who are concerned about the climate issue do to drive a more science-based and also bipartisan conversation about it?
Well, look, I think part of it is just speaking up, because there is a huge disconnect between a lot of the beliefs in Washington about what climate policy is or can do. I think, as I think today about what's the narrative on just the greenhouse gas rules going to be, we can all paint the pictures about the science, we can talk about the health impacts, but really this debate is going to boil down to a lot of fight over economic impact, and whether renewables, energy efficiency, clean tech actually provide or create new job opportunities. And part of the challenge is the environmental NGO community will do a great job at talking about these economic opportunities. The president and the administration will go out there and point to different reports and analysis that show that there are new job and economic opportunities associated with these rules. But business leaders are the ones with actual credibility. And so their voices, especially on this issue, are very, very key to our success.
So you'd like the Walmart, GEs, Googles, IBMs of the world to come out and say this makes sense to us. That might be helpful.
Absolutely.
Okay. Another question? It's hard to see. Looks like there's one from deep left field out there.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Paul Snyder with Intercontinental Hotels Group. My question is for Rick. Rick, you said something that I'd like to hear more about, which is the system you say you designed so that it would work with other systems. So that's particularly a challenge for us, is the different solutions that are running out there and how we sync them up.
Yeah, well, specifically in the case of the measurement tools that we've created through the coalition that Patagonia is implementing right now, we're working with the Fair Labor Association so that the assessment tools that they use and the audit tools they use in the supply chain to measure social labor impacts are harmonized with the tools that we're using. And in fact, our tools are a subset of their tools, so that you avoid duplication of measurement and gain enormous efficiencies with suppliers, because they can just measure once and satisfy both their FLA customers and their Apparel Coalition customers, including us. With the Sustainability Consortium, which you may know about, another group of consumer goods companies that have developed a KPI tool, we're working with them for exactly the same outcome, so that their KPI tool is actually a subset of our tool that measures facility impact in the supply chain for exactly the same reasons. So if somebody uses the TSC tool, then they automatically have pre-populated a big part of our HIG tools, which are what the Apparel Coalition has branded their tool set. So that's what I meant through harmonization.
Rick, let me give you a chance to talk about Patagonia, because you've been very active as a company in trying to change the buy it, wear it, throw it away mindset of consumers, sort of the opposite end of the spectrum from the Forever 21s or those folks. So how, why is any of it catching on beyond the fringe?
Well, it's systems. That's where we started this conversation now. I've just been talking about the supply chain end of it mostly. But if you look at the entire value chain, as I mentioned earlier, empowering citizens to make more informed decisions is a huge part of that. So we're going there, trying to give them tools to do just that. But we're also trying to encourage them to have a different engagement with stuff. At its most basic, that we've developed an initiative called Warmware, which encourages our customers, first of all, to think twice about whether they need to even buy anything in the first place. Can you get by with what you've already got, or do you really need some new stuff? And if you do need new stuff, then think about buying something that's going to be multifunctional, that can be used for as many different things as possible, that is repairable, that at the end of its useful life is truly recyclable. And if you're not using it, think about it, about giving it to somebody else to reuse so that you can keep it in circulation. So we're, through this Warmware initiative, providing ways for our customers to do all those things to make it as easiest as possible for them to be as responsible as they can for the full life of the stuff that we make and they buy from us.
And is the pitch economics? Is it about saving money, or is it about environmental responsibility?
Well, ideally, these things work best when they're both. And in this case, it is. This whole idea for this initiative is rooted in the 2008 recession, when we noticed a shift in consumer behavior and in consumption amongst the little cognoscenti who were recognizing the value proposition in investing in quality products. Quality products cost more, but people were realizing that when times are hard, that's actually a better investment proposition if you buy something and use it for a long period of time rather than keep repurchasing. We wanted those people. Those are our guys. So we came up with this initiative back then to provide them the tools that they need, and we hope through their leadership encourage other consumers to be thinking like those leaders are.
So I like this sports jacket. How old is it?
Well, this one's about 6 or 7 years old.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, it was expensive. I got it in Paris. It's not Patagonia, but I wish it was. Nice linen coat. My wife got it.
Okay.
She dresses me.
Jonathan?
But I tell you, here's one more thing. I know we're almost out of time. You know, I've been married 32 years. When I came into the marriage, my wife was like this lead figure in Calvin Klein. And she was, you know, she brought all this wardrobe into the marriage. And 40 years later, because she'd already had this stuff for a long time, our daughters are wearing the same stuff. It's still being used. That's what I'm talking about. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
That is cool.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, 60% of the people are ready to look at solar. It makes sense in 15 states. What stands in the way of rapidly ramping that up, speaking for the industry as a whole now?
Well, it's not an app that can go viral, you know, and that's one of the great things about it. That's why it creates so many jobs. It's a sea change in the infrastructure. So, you know, Solar City's coming close to doubling every year. The industry's growing between 40 and 60% every year. You know, we're still at less than 1% of generation, but we're the second largest source of new generation in 2013. So we're moving in the right direction. It's not an app that could go viral overnight, right, but it's happening, and the fundamentals are there. If you can offer solar electricity at a discount to utility rates, you'll see adoption, and that's going to happen in the next 5 years.
Great. I think we have time for one more from the audience, if there is one.
There's got one over here.
Yes, please.
Dennis Creech with Southface. Jonathan, I'm curious, in the non-15 states, is it more the lack of state incentives for solar or more the barriers to your financing business model that keeps solar from penetrating those other markets?
Or lack of sunshine, right?
Sure. It's the solar. It's an equation with three variables. It's the cost of power. That's the biggest one. So if you're coal is cheap, and if you're using a lot of coal to produce electricity, you might have pretty low electricity costs, especially if you're not accounting for the true cost of coal. Sun exposure is the second variable, and then local incentives. Although local incentives have fallen dramatically. One of the great success stories of solar is that we're at retail parity. You know, local incentives in California are practically gone. They're dramatically diminished in other locations as well. So we've reduced our dependence on local incentives dramatically. Now it's a function of the retail cost of power and available sunlight. But the two costs that matter are moving in the right direction. The retail cost of power is going up, and the cost of solar electricity is coming down because our feedstock is free. So as we take more and more costs out of the process of producing that electricity, time is on our side.
So again, it's a system, and if Heather is successful, as I assume you're still working on carbon pricing, that's going to help you a great deal.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think we're going to wrap this up. A minute ahead of time, note, folks in the back with the timekeepers. We are going to have an opportunity to dig a lot deeper into all three of these themes: system change, awakening the consumer, and the politics of climate over the next 2 days. But for now, please join me in thanking Rick, Jonathan, and Heather.